You like Art Nouveau. You like...
yeah, coffee. I drink coffee. Tea. That is not usual. And then this man, Andrei, make one play, one last play, Temptation, make on the video film, amateur but very nice. Co? Jo, že jako točil v našich jako úplně v amatérských podmínkách na celý pokoušení pro jako na video.
Temptation was filmed by him in really amateurish conditions.
Temptation was done in the United States.
Pokoušení bylo natočeno také v Spojených státech.
Gordon Davidson's theater. I believe you've met Gordon Davidson.
Gordon Davis v tom hrál.
Pokoušení Temptation? Jako film?
Was it a film or a play?
Play.
Jako hru?
Yes. Aha. Yes.
Havel had some help from several quarters. Thanks to the remarkable diplomacy of William Luers, who had been the American ambassador to Prague from 1983 till 1986, his wife, Wendy, and a few of his fellow diplomats, Charter 77 and the whole Czechoslovak intellectual opposition had never been entirely cut off from the world of ideas and politics across the ocean. One of the things that made life in normalized Czechoslovakia more bearable, if not more trouble-free, was going to the ambassador's grand residence in Prague and meeting there with Kurt Vonnegut, Bill and Rose Styron, Edward Albee, John Updike, Philip Roth, and many others. This called for an elaborate choreography, since the government bureaucrats that the ambassador also had to entertain would not be caught in the same room with the washouts and self-appointees. They would not even be caught with them in the same garden. On his arrival at the 1985 US Independence Day celebration in Prague, a brilliant summer day, the deputy Czechoslovak foreign minister Jaromír Johannes, representing the communist government, took about a minute before he identified Havel among the guests milling about the lawn, said, "He is here," spun around and walked out with all the other officials from the foreign ministry.
Na zdraví. Cheers.
Good evening and welcome to our 2020 Gala. I'm sorry that we can't all be together in person in these strange and challenging times, but I'm so glad that we are able to gather virtually to honor the legacy of Vaclav Havel, to support the work of the Havel Library Foundation, and to pay tribute to tonight's honorees, Ambassador Bill and Wendy Luers. Vaclav Havel once famously said that truth and love must prevail over lies and hatred. And although I have invoked that phrase on a number of occasions over the years, it's never felt as apt as it does today, at a time when truth and facts are under attack, and at a time when love is seemingly in short supply at a time when we need it most. Times like these call for individuals who are willing to speak out and speak the truth. Individuals not just including Vaclav Havel, but also like so many of the individuals and organizations that the Havel Library has supported over the years. Times like these also call for innovative and devoted diplomats and public servants, such as Ambassador Bill and Wendy Luers. When Ambassador Luers was posted in Czechoslovakia, he and Wendy quickly became trailblazers. They hosted dissidents. They had events at the residence that raised the eyebrows of communist authorities on more than one occasion. They reached out to all sectors of society, and they left a legacy that remains to this day, a legacy of cultural engagement and philanthropy. Speaking of philanthropy, While you are here at this event tonight, I hope you will click through to learn more about what the Havel Library Foundation does and how you might be able to help us. We depend on your support. And in particular this evening, we're having an online auction. So I would encourage you to take a look at some of the many items you can bid on there, and if you find something that you like, you can take satisfaction in knowing that you're not only bidding on and buying something that might be of use and interest to you, but also you're supporting the important work that the foundation does. I said that it's fortunate that we can all be here virtually together, but I look forward to being together again under more normal circumstances next year with all of you in New York to honor and support the work of the Havel Library Foundation. Tonight I want to thank you for being with us, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Hello, Bill. Hello, Wendy. Hello, anybody else who's watching. I'm recording this in our wooden house up here in the Sudetenland, halfway between Prague and Dresden. And Bill and Wendy, you were here with us, clambering over the construction a little over 8 years ago. I was so looking forward to coming and being with you on this amazing occasion. But I'm stuck here in this lovely green bubble, actually doing really beautifully, especially in comparison to the rest of the world and to the United States, which is undergoing so much trauma in these days of September 2020. Helen and I remember you and Wendy in so many ways and have so many connections that I couldn't even begin to count them. You were our role models of how to do good in the world. Bill, you are the embodiment of the skillful, compassionate diplomat from those old days which seem so long ago, where we Americans were the good guys, where the Czechs looked out from the castle walls to see the American flag fluttering over the glorietta in the embassy and had hope. We were in Prague for all your years here, when your residence was a center of artistic and cultural and social encounters that actually played a big role in planting the seeds of the Velvet Revolution. Dearest to my heart and to Helena's was how you understood the role of culture, of art, of music, of dance, of literature to change the world. So in a moment, I'm going to play for you a piece that I first put together back in 2008 to celebrate the inauguration of Barack Obama. It's a collection of American songs that you'll recognize, each evoking a different place in the heart of our country. But for your special version, I have inserted the Czech national anthem. See if you recognize it.
they offered me the job of ambassador. As I say, I'd been ambassador to Venezuela, which was a very senior post. It was one of the most senior posts in Latin America. And they were sending me to this little country in Central Europe, which was the country we had the worst relationships with in the region. So I wasn't sure whether it would be much other than a lovely city for me to wait to get to Moscow, where I really knew what was going on, and it was an important place to be. And as I say, this visit, that arrival in December of 1983, turned out not to be just going into some hole where I was not going to have much access or much understanding of this country that was so hostile to the United States, but it turned out to be a life-forming, changing moment in my life and in Wendy's life.
We remember 80s where Bill was the ambassador in Prague, and we were many times invited to the embassy, and they prepare a lot of cultural events.
It's very pleasant for me that I am able to pass to you my congratulations to the prize. And what I think is that nobody deserves it more than you both, Wendy and Bill. I remember our meetings in the embassy before the Velvet Revolution, when we periodically met with, not only with them, but also with our friends from the cultural and even dissident circles, which were made possible to get together in a place when we felt very free. Of course, probably it was eavesdropped, but we felt very free with them. And I think that from the cultural viewpoint, it was extremely important for our survival.
Well, I remember Wendy and Bill in Czechoslovakia. It's a long time ago, and at this time I think I was very young, sort of activist, and my friend Martin Palouš introduced me to Wendy. And Wendy at this time helped me a lot because she smuggled my interview with few interviews with Czech writers, and she smuggled these interviews to United States. And for me, as a very young journalist and underground activist, it was something. And I remember Bill, like very long man, and at this time I was thinking all Americans are long people.
when the Luers came, you know, and it was another new experience, quite pleasant and surprising, because it was just like if not just one ambassador came, but two ambassadors. Wendy was so, you know, so active and so inspirative. She created her role as a complement, you know. She was the gentle, inspirative, smiling and friendly part, you know, and she made a friendship very, very easily. For example, when our son Michal had his wedding, you see, the Luers and their friends came to the wedding and joined us just as a family, you know. It was so. This was such a sort of example, and I think it was Wendy's inspiration that all this happened, and so it means that I would say the cultural side of the professional diplomacy somehow changed into friendship, you know, into rather close friendship.
During 1983 and 1986, that I and a couple of my colleagues had a chance to meet some of the most prominent American writers. They all came to Prague. They were all invited to Prague by American ambassador to Czechoslovakia, Bill Luers and his wife, Wendy. I still vividly remember meeting playwright Edward Albee, writers Kurt Vonnegut, William Styron, Robert Stone, E.L. Doctorow, or poet Galway Kinnell. Of course, we were not the only ones who had the pleasure to meet these people. But Bill Luers also courageously invited dissidents and signatories of Charter 77. So we had a unique opportunity also to meet some people like Václav Havel, Zdeněk Urbánek, Ludvík Vaculík and others. So the ambassador's residence was a place to meet not only the leading American writers, but also leading Czech dissidents. This connecting people and giving cultural diplomacy a very special meaning was a very important and commendable part of Bill's and Wendy's mission. And we were lucky because they fell in love with our country, I believe. They became friends with Charter 77 signatories and supported them in their fight for freedom. And after the revolution, they were among the first to offer help to the new democratic regime, especially to their friend and our first president, Václav Havel. Wendy, with her exceptional organizational skills and inexhaustible energy, founded the Foundation for Civil Society in January 1990, and later in 2012 co-founded the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation. So the Luerses deserve a great thanks and gratitude for everything they have been doing over such a long time for our country, and especially for keeping Havel's legacy alive.
I consider the biggest role of Bill Luers and Wendy Luers in Czech Republic as being the guardians of Czech dissidents. The fact that the role was based on the fact that they protected those dissidents from being ostracized by the regime, by being so heavily prosecuted.
It is New Year's Day 1990 in Prague. We're sitting in the kitchen of Olga Havel 3 days after her husband was elected the president of Czechoslovakia. With her is her old friend Wendy Luers, the wife of William Luers, who was the US ambassador to Czechoslovakia from 1983 to 1986. Wendy came to ask Olga about her role in the video journal.
Olga, what is video journal? Videožurnál je založená samizdatová společnost, která vznikla z potřeby, byly časopisy, se vydávaly samizdatově, noviny, všecko možný, ale televize, která u nás byla velice špatná a vůbec neinformovala o některých věcech, pochopitelně třeba o nás nebo tak vznikla potřeba dělat si to sami. Takže jsme si opatřili stroje a začali jsme to dělat amatéři nebo poloprofesionálové jako z potřeby určité informace sdělit.
Michael, you're going to have to translate for me.
Sure. Video Journal is a samizdat TV group that came into being as one of the samizdat groups. We always had problems with the Czech television, which was very bad. So next to all other samizdat magazines and papers, we decided to get some equipment and start doing TV work.
Well, I was very lucky because I think it was in 1996 when I came back from my studies in the United States, and I was looking for something interesting to do in the Czech Republic, and I realized that there was a foundation, American foundation working back then in the Czech Republic called Foundation for Civil Society. So I became really interested in what kind of foundation it is and what they do. So I met with the people who worked in the foundation, and it wouldn't take long and I would meet with Wendy, who actually was the founder of the Foundation for Civil Society. And then a year later, then I became member of, it's like I was cooperating with the foundation. And then a year later, in 1997, basically the decision had to be taken whether to continue as a Czech indigenous organization, foundation, or whether to close the shop in the Czech Republic. And I was part of that group of people who were dreaming about some potential future, potential continuation of the wonderful work Wendy and her team did in the Czech Republic and Slovakia then. And we decided that there was still a need to continue with the mission of building civil society and democracy. And this is how VIA Foundation in the Czech Republic and Pontis Foundation in Slovakia came to existence. So basically Wendy is responsible for really making sure that for 23 years I had the best job I wouldn't even dream about, but I had it.
By his cultural diplomacy, William Luers with Wendy gave the Czech cultural opposition the strength to fight non-violently against totalitarianism. They helped to create the social atmosphere that led us to the Velvet Revolution. The Velvet Revolution that was started by students along with theater artists made the writer and playwright Václav Havel the head of state. In the 1990s, Havel as a president of Czechoslovakia and later of Czech Republic played the role of the philosopher of the global politics and global defender of human rights. Mr. and Mrs. Luers helped him to fulfill his remarkable cultural diplomacy. In the domestic Czech politics, one of the main programs of Havel's policy was the renewal of civil society. Even in this difficult work, he found great help from Wendy and the Foundation for a Civil Society created by her for this purpose. Wendy and Bill, thank you for everything. Thank you for the great work you did for Václav Havel, for all of us, for free Czech cultural life. Congratulations. My heart is with you in New York in this very moment.
No tak pro mě znamenala mnoho, protože zaprvé to byla první příležitost se vůbec dostat nějakým způsobem do světa. A potom pro mě osobně znamenala úplně nejvíc, protože jsem se dostal vlastně do místa, které teda se stalo takovým mým srdečním místem, kam jsem se od té doby několikrát vracel, do Headland Center for the Arts u San Francisca. A jinak jako celkově vlastně ta cena měla v té době velikou váhu, protože ty osobnosti, které ji založili, těch si všichni vážili. A například já si pamatuju, že vlastně když jsem tu cenu dostal, tak jsem se automaticky stal čestným členem Rady hradu, což bych asi teďko nechtěl se stát. A vlastně i to, že jsme se mohli setkat s Václavem Havlem, že tu cenu předával osobně, tak to bylo skvělé. A pro nás to byl naprostý zázrak, že se někdo takový stal prezidentem, protože to se prostě, jako kdyby se nám zhmotnil nějaký sen. A ta doba byla tak jako úžasná, že na to budeme velice vzpomínat a jeho odkaz je především morální, to znamená, že jako celá jeho osobnost, která není pouze, že to nebyl pouze politik, ale prostě ještě tím, že to vlastně byl umělec, že to byl literát, že to byl dramatik, tak to taky nikde na světě neexistuje. A jako ten jeho humanismus a všechno tohleto, co v něm bylo, tak to mám pocit, že nemělo teda ve světě obdoby. To znamená, že jeho odkaz je pro nás velice živý, i když v současné době je tady úplně jiná situace, ale já každopádně vždycky budu patřit k jeho velkým teda ctitelům.
Havel's belief in the individual human responsibility has set the stage for this new and more challenging era in the history of humanity. Listen to the words of Havel. The salvation of this human world lies nowhere else than in the human heart, in the human power to reflect, in human meekness, and in human responsibility. At the end of his signature work, Power to the Powerless, Havel imagines a new era, a new experience of being, a new rootedness in the universe, a newly grasped sense of higher responsibility, and a newfound inner relationship to other people and to the human community. Havel's words then sounded utopian. Today they sound prescient. He calls us to look forward rather than backward. Never in history of humanity has there been such a need for a global civic forum, for billions of Earth's citizens to exert their higher human responsibility to assure that our Earth will remain habitable for the next century. And if each individual chooses only self-survival, human civilization will be in peril. Even though Havel never addressed directly climate change, if we choose Havel's summons to individual responsibility to our vast human community, we will overcome and endure. Tonight, on this glorious anniversary, to which Wendy and I are so proud to have been invited to speak, let us pledge ourselves to follow Václav Havel's charge. We must build a civic forum of global citizens who will dedicate themselves to a single goal: to preserve an Earth in which our children and future generations will prosper and long endure. I thank you all.
Thank you. Pan William Luers. Work for something because it's good, not just because it has a chance to succeed. These words from Václav Havel capture not only his life purpose, but the life purpose of the two people we honor tonight, Bill and Wendy Luers. Bill and Wendy are the recipients of the Bohemian, Benevolent, and Literary Association's 2020 Award for unparalleled service to Czech and Slovak communities. There could be no one more deserving than Bill and Wendy. My name is Stephen Heinz, and my wife Lisa Stone and I are honored to say a few words about this extraordinary couple whom we have known for more than 30 years. As often happens with Bill and Wendy, our relationship began with networking when I was looking for a way to go to Eastern Europe and help in the process of building democracy, or in the case of Czechoslovakia, rebuilding democracy after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Bill and Wendy helped me land a job with the East-West Institute in Prague, where Bill had served as US ambassador a few years earlier. I moved to Prague in the summer of 1990, and a few years later, Wendy's Foundation for a Civil Society supported Lisa's position working at Prague Castle for President Havel. Arriving in Prague, I quickly learned that an American in that seductive golden city could barely turn around without meeting people whose lives Bill and Wendy had touched and changed, including, most importantly, Havel himself. During Bill's tenure as ambassador, he and Wendy turned their official residence into an oasis for dissidents who never expected to wind up on the guest list of the US ambassador while they were being followed, imprisoned, and silenced for their thoughts by their own government. Wendy defied diplomatic norms by visiting their imprisoned friends, and Bill championed their cause in Washington. Back then, it bears a mention, the US represented the best of democracy, And at least to many Czechs and Slovaks, it also represented a tantalizing, forbidden culture of experimentation in the arts, in music, in literature, film, and politics. Could the American cultural, intellectual, and political figures that Bill and Wendy brought to their embassy have planted ideas in the dissidents' heads or nurtured their hopes for political and cultural freedom? You bet. That's what cultural diplomacy is about. And in pursuit of democracy, it is truly profound good work.
When Wendy and Bill finished their tour, they returned to the US, but they left their hearts behind in Central Europe. The political and moral plate tectonics that led to Czechoslovakia's freedom in 1989 had grown with Wendy and Bill's encouragement, and they did not forget what they'd learned while practicing diplomacy immersed in culture. So when our Congress invited the newly elected Czechoslovak president to address a joint meeting in Washington, Wendy and Bill shaped Vaclav Havel's visit as only experienced hands could. When Western expertise was needed to shore up institutions across the Czech and Slovak republics, Wendy created her foundation for a civil society, and in turn, 2 vibrant NGOs, Via and Pontus, that have been lifting lives and supporting civil society in the Czech and Slovak republics to this day. When I worked as an advisor with Havel's foreign policy team, Bill and Wendy each supported me with their wisdom and contacts. And in recognition of Havel's ties to North America, Wendy founded the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation here in New York as a partner to the Havel Library in Prague. Our foundation's oral histories, Disturbing the Peace Literary Award, Rehearsal for Truth Theater Festival, and International Student Playwriting Awards all uphold the ideals of the foundation's namesake. I like to picture the backyard at the Peček Palace with a bunch of long-haired dissidents nibbling the hors d'oeuvres while Bill holds forth on American values. One smallish guest, a dissident playwright with an awkward speaking style, was turning out writings that ultimately helped to tumble the walls of communism as the Cold War came to an end. Havel wrote, "None of us know all the potentialities that slumber in the spirit of the population, or all the ways in which that population can surprise us when there is the right interplay of events." On that note, thank you, Wendy and Bill, for your long and strong service to the Czech and Slovak republics, and congratulations on this award.
Dearest Wendy and Bill, it is my absolute privilege to present to you this award on behalf of the Bohemian, Benevolent and Literary Association for the unparalleled service to the Czech and Slovak communities for 2020.
Díky. Translated roughly from the Czech, díky means thank you, Lisa and Stephen, Greg and Debbie, Joseph, Andy, and the amazing and creative Pavla Miklova. The Velvet Revolution welded an unbreakable bond among those who watched Havel as his band of revolutionaries thought and laughed their way peacefully to power. That miraculous year after 1989 buoyed thousands of us who shared and delighted in being part of it. We are a club of people who remain hopeful that humans have a capacity to overcome desperate days. Stephen, Lisa, Wendy and I passed many of those glorious days together, as did many others at tonight's event. None of us was more energized by the explosion of hope than Wendy Luers. In January 1990, days after the inauguration of the first president of free Czechoslovakia, several American Foundation leaders gathered in the Ford Foundation building to learn about this unexpected new phenomenon in Prague. They pledged on the spot to provide Wendy funding for a new organization that she would lead. It came to be known as the Foundation for a Civil Society. They had heard, I don't know from where, of those 3 years when we were in Prague, and we brought writers and artists from around the United States. And we wedded this relationship with Havel and his group. The Velvet Revolution was, in real terms, a cultural revolution. After that meeting at the Ford Foundation, Wendy, in a whirlwind few months, assembled a gaggle of young, smart dreamers who, over the next decade, established dozens of new programs to support Havel's task of building a new democratic society, some of which still prosper under Czechs and Slovaks. Wendy deserves the honor you give us tonight. For Vaclav Havel, the building of human responsibility and power took precedence over building governments and political parties. That belief was the source of his wisdom and of his disappointments. At the end of his signature work, Power to the Powerless, Havel imagines a new era, a new experience of being, a new rootedness in the universe, a newly grasped sense of higher responsibility, and a newfound inner relationship to other people and to the human community. Until recently, those words sounded utopian. Today, in times of pandemics and climate change, they are farsighted. Never in human history has there been such a need for a global civic forum, for 7 billion citizens to exert their higher responsibility and power to assure that our Earth will remain habitable for our fellow humans in the next century. If each individual chooses only self-survival, human civilization is in peril. If we accept Havel's summons to individual responsibility and a greater community, we will flourish.
Okay, off you go.
Where's the applause? No.
Thank you, Bill, my love and inspiration for the past 40+ years. What is patently obvious is that I never could have dreamt of being in Prague as the wife of the American ambassador in the mid-'80s. Bill has led in the area of cultural and public diplomacy from Moscow to Caracas and then to Prague, bringing the most talented and prominent artists, writers, poets, painters, and playwrights to each country to celebrate their culture and meet their counterparts, especially impactful in closed communist Czechoslovakia in the mid-'80s. As you may have come to understand, I love to start things. From the Chilean prisoner parole program for Amnesty International in 1977-78, to Pacific Primary in San Francisco, where my children were, to the Foundation for Art and Preservation in Embassies, inspired by the ambassador's residence, the Peček Palace in Prague in 1986, the Foundation for a Civil Society in 1990, and the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation in 2012. Frankly, I'm really proud of our legacy. FCS's former offices in Prague and Bratislava are now the leading NGOs in each country. The Young Visual Artists Award program is now in 12 countries. 500 American Mosrick Fellows, all young, taught English in the early 90s, many of whom remain loyal to the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And of course, the Vaclav Havel Library Foundation, which ensures the legacy of Vaclav Havel in the English-speaking world. It is important to recognize that Vaclav Havel Library Foundation would never have thrived without the inspired and talented leadership of Pavla Nikolova. Congratulations, Pavla. When Havel produced Disturbing the Peace in 1985-86 in interviews with a Czech journalist in Germany, he said, "Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out, even when conditions seem hopeless as ours do here and now." We were there then, and were given the opportunity to come back in 1989 and host Havel's inaugural dinner on December 28th, the night before his inauguration, with all of the dissident pals, now the new free Czechoslovakia government. And then organizing with Madeleine Albright the unforgettable trip to Washington and New York in February of 1990. His legacy must be preserved. We try very hard to do that, and as a result, Bill Luers was asked as the only foreigner to speak last November 19th on the anniversary of the 30th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution to 130,000 cheering people in Wenceslas Square. And Havel was cited very often throughout that. I close with my favorite quote of his: "When a truth is not given complete freedom, freedom is not complete." Thank you, Diki, Yakuyo, and Dobro noc.
Bill, this is for you. We are playing in the Malostranska beseda, which you might remember is just a few hundred meters away from the embassy. It also is the club where Martin and I started our duo on a very fortuitous evening in April of '85, which is about when you came to the Czech Republic. And I know that maybe some of the audience here doesn't understand English, but you have to understand how important Bill Luers was to the whole development of the underground movement in this country. He fostered conversations with dissidents at his residence, Václav Havel and Jiří Dienspír and Ivan Havel were there for dinners. He got people together, and these were the good old days when American diplomacy really helped freedom in the world. So Bill, here in the Malostranska beseda, we're going to play you Happy Birthday. And we are a trio, the third of our trio, Imran Musazangi, who is also, he was born in Iran, and we know you have done a lot for the relationships of the US and Iran to stay as peaceful as possible. And so it's very fitting, Czech, American, and Iran, and we will play you Happy Birthday, and I'll ask the public here to sing in Czech at the end. Hodně štěstí, zdraví a tak dále. So